going to be talking about right now ethics and research in the profession. And for this, I have a case study, and I kind of like to get your ideas on this. And this also has some hands-on thoughts and discussions. So, all right, what exactly is ethics in research? Ethics in research. This could also be associated with ethics in graduate school, including taking classes and stuff. But think about the what are we calling ethics in research? So I'd like you to turn to your neighbor, form groups of 4. Why are you guys smirking? Form groups of 4. Create 3 bullet points of what you think research and ethics are. All right, so I'll actually type some of the ideas that you have here. So this group up here, give me one.
No plagiarism.
No, you going to define plagiarism?
Not copying someone else's work.
Don't copy someone's work. Work or writing? I'm going to say writing because well, if I could actually spell this right. Hey, thank goodness for spell check. Plagiarism is specifically associated with writing. All right. How about this group over here?
Well, try to do your research in a timely manner.
Ooh. Do research in a timely manner. All right. How about you, group back there by the camera?
Originality of the research and proper citations.
Something in proper citations, I heard.
Originality of the research.
Proper citation.
Okay, well, I'll put down properly cite others' work. Man, I can spell. Okay, how about a group back here? The group of 5 that was back there. Yeah, you have all those 3, exactly all those 3?
First and third.
Okay, so what's the other one you don't have? What is it? Yeah, okay, you're not done. All right. Did I ask you? All right. All the way over there in the corner.
Properly list everyone's contribution.
Ooh, properly. How about acknowledge? List everyone's contribution. How about that? Does that look good? What about, how about the undergrads up here? Do you have anything?
Don't falsify data.
Ooh, that's a good one. All right. What about this group back there in that corner?
Amendments. Other amendments.
What do you mean by other amendments?
If any amendments is done, it should be listed as other.
Yeah, I can't hear you. You're too far away. Say that louder.
If any amendments is done after publishing, you can do it after, like you can add an extra paper with that.
Oh, okay. So report any. How about any corrections to papers, data, results. How about that? You like that? All right. Anybody else? Okay, so anybody else have anything that I haven't put up on the board?
Don't procrastinate.
I like do research in a timely manner that says the same thing. How about that?
Work has to be methodical.
Work methodically. All right. And I'm going to add, go ahead.
We shouldn't discuss ongoing research, critical information regarding ongoing research.
Well, I don't know. Sometimes you do want to tell people about your research before you publish, but I probably will say be cognizant of, my space bar doesn't work, of proprietary information. How about that? So you might be doing work on, well, you wouldn't be doing on a Department of Defense project because they usually just want U.S. citizens on that. But let's say you're working and doing something for a company that will actually be considered a trade secret. So don't publicize a trade secret, all right? I'm going to do one more is do not take credit for someone else's work. All right, you like that? Well, you may not like it, but are any other additions? All right, so let's take a look at what we identified here and look at a case study in particular. All right, so is this a good paper? Oh, that's interesting. Implementation of CAN bus in an autonomous all-terrain vehicle. Wow, anybody ever hear of Avanti Institute of Engineering and Technology in Hyderabad?
Yes.
Did you go there?
My mom used to work there.
Oh, your mom used to work there, okay. Interesting that this is done by postgraduate scholars, so that's like a master's student, right? And then the head of department did this work. And they talk about how they used a all-terrain vehicle to do some of their work. Well, that's interesting. So does it look like it could be a good paper? Well, hold that thought. This is in the International Journal of Advanced Technology and Innovative Research. Actually, I pulled this off the web. They have a website. This paper is posted there. It's kind of like one of these open access journals. So it must be a good paper because it's copied from somebody else. Specifically, implementation of CAN bus in an autonomous all-terrain vehicle. It has like the same words. Honda 4Trax Rancher AT, same title. Interesting enough, if you looked at these papers side by side, okay. You may not be able to see this from afar, but this paper right here says copyright 2011 IEEE, and this one says copyright 2015, whatever this company is, right? And oh yeah, you know, you look really hard. Oh, it looks like the IEEE paper came first, right? Well, so based on the bullet points that you saw earlier, what's wrong with this instance? So let's go back to this and see what you said. What you decided on, and this is open discussion, so talk loud enough, and I'll go near you so that you can be picked up by the microphone. Talk loud enough. What are the violations, it seems like, for that? Plagiarism. All right, plagiarism to begin with, because it looks like they wrote, well, that assumes, we kind of like establish this that they're exactly the same paper, right? Same pictures, pretty much the same text, same title. Actually, they have the same references, too. In fact, the only difference between the two papers is the author. Is the author name. All right, so plagiarism. What else?
Taking credit for someone else.
Properly cite others' work.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might be like, well, how about the last one? Don't take credit for somebody else's work. Anything else? Do not falsify data results. Well, I mean, you pretty much agree that that is this is one of the most egregious instances of plagiarism violation or poor research ethics that I've ever seen. There is another one that I will come up with, but I may or may not tell you this. So I think you pretty much know enough that what happened here in this ethical violation. A researcher submitted a paper to a journal. They did not do the work. They did not write any words. They didn't even correct the typos in the paper. They're representing this work as their own. They lied to the publisher that this work was theirs and that they owned the writing, and so they violated copyright law there. The publisher there also violated copyright law by copywriting and publishing a paper that was already copyrighted and published. And the student also likely received credit for a project class or a thesis for their plagiarism. So in essence, they really didn't do the work needed to earn the degree. So now look at just pulling, just doing something like this. Who's been hurt? Well, let's see, is that my next slide? Oh yeah, they should have known better, first of all. One is a graduate student and a head of department. And so, think about this. Put yourself in the shoes of the authors. How would you feel if somebody took credit for your work? And as I said, who else has been wronged by this violation? So let's think about who's been wronged. The original authors.
Maybe the companies which have
Okay, the company that published the second work, the company or organization that published the first work.
All those have cited.
And the what?
All those other authors who have cited this work.
The other authors who might cite this work, this illegal work. How about the student himself, the department of the student, the faculty member? Well, I wouldn't say they were wronged, but they may have some implication later. And anybody who this postgraduate student will work for, because they really didn't earn their degree and use correct research ethics to go about this, to do this paper that they did. So, well, since I own one of the ATVs that is described in there, and I doubt very much that anybody in the world is going to call this Zapata-bot. This is called Zapata-bot because it was funded by Zapata Engineering. So perhaps I was the one who was wronged, right? Along with my student who he and I worked on this project. This was actually part of his master's thesis. We pulled words from his master's thesis and published it in Southeast Con. So as I said, it's who's been hurt by this incident? Obviously IEEE, because their brand has been compromised by the two identical papers. The unethical authors, they got away with this plagiarism and are encouraged to do it again because they got away with it. The Indian publisher, author put them in an illegal situation. And then the authors of the legitimate paper may see the value of their papers decrease when word of this incident is known. And then, of course, the Indian Institute where they are working. So the good thing, this is an extreme example, all right? There are a lot less egregious instances of this. Egregious meaning lifting an entire paragraph from the internet and putting it in a paper is also poor ethical behavior for research. So if you're thinking about doing a paper for Southeast Con or something like that, literally copying word for word a paper from the internet, or a paper from the internet or a web page from the internet and putting it in without really citing it. Literally, if it's a long thing, you put it in quotes. If it's really long, you put it in quotes and then you indent it from the sides of the page. So anytime that you do something like this, it's considered theft. And theft is taking something that belongs to another person. So usually the inner party no longer has the item, but in this case, it seems like everybody shares, right? But the problem with this is it happens way too often. And in fact, IEEE has an entire department that works on this. In fact, they're looking at my paper. I don't know why they can't look at it faster, because it's what we would call in the US, it's pretty much a slam dunk, meaning it's inherently obvious to anybody who would look at it that it is plagiarism. But what about publishing somebody else's work and representing it as their own? So a student does some work with or without a professor's help, and the professor publishes a paper on the work without the student's name on the paper. That actually happens more often than you would think. I personally don't do that. I have lots and lots and lots of examples of, I cannot believe this. Thank goodness we don't have the donut rule. Because as a matter of fact, I met a student on the elevator that had to pay donuts to the rest of the class for their phone going off. So good thing. All right, so get back on this. You know, usually what happens is that a student works under the direction of a faculty member. The faculty member will help guide the work, but typically doesn't actually do the programming or the wiring or anything like that. And they will help guide the student with the writing, make corrections, suggest changes. In a case like that, usually it's best, as I said, the student and the faculty member will publish the paper. The student's name will go first. In fact, usually the order of the name of the paper is whoever does the most work, all the way down to the person who does the least amount of work. So that's typically what happens. Another would be student-professor work together, and then the student publishes a paper about the work without including the professor. And in fact, this just happened to me in the spring. I was working with a senior design group. I actually helped them with the design, or made suggestions on the design. It turns out that they published a paper and didn't put me on it. Now, I can prove that I was involved in some of the ideas that they used were my ideas. But, you know, it's at this point, who cares? You know, I've got so many papers, it doesn't matter. So that's just one aspect that you need to think about with respect to ethics, especially in publishing. Now, when you're talking about ethics and why, well, there's another aspect. I just talked about engineering or ethics in research, but there's also ethics with respect to the practice. And most of you will not write a paper. How many of you actually have a published paper that's archivable? All right, so I can search the internet, I can find it. Is it in IEEE Explorer? Oh, then it's not worth it. So, unless, in my opinion, if you can't find it using Google Scholar, it's not out there. So just remember, you can put it in Google Scholar too. Or what is that other, ResearchGate, right? By the way, how many of you have a ResearchGate account? All right, so you have your paper in there? Yes? Okay, you should. I have one out there too. In fact, maybe I'll even show what that means. All right, so getting back to engineering and ethics. An engineer's first obligation when they practice, almost all of you are going to practice engineering. In fact, for the Indian students who are here getting a master's degree, usually that's your end goal, is to earn a master's degree and be a practicing engineer. And so this is really applicable for you, as well as the undergraduate students who will practice. And your first obligation is to society. It's not to yourself, it's not to your company, it's to society. It takes precedence over all others because you have to make sure that you are a guardian of society, of the safety and welfare of whatever you do. Now, the gray area is if you're making weapons, right? I'm designing a bomber airplane. Is that to the safety of society, all right? Well, that's where you have to say I'm safe for this half of society, but maybe not that half of society. Meaning those that are protected and those who are going to get bombed, all right? And that's why you could, if you work in defense, you could always work on products that will actually help people and save them, like mine detectors. That's a good example. You know, making mines, gray area, but making the device that will discover mines so that people don't citizens won't step on them later. That sounds like that would be a good thing. But you have to be a guardian of safety and welfare of the public. So in other words, when you are designing an automobile, or the software for an automobile, that the software is as correct as possible, and it doesn't cause the vehicle to suddenly accelerate and have no way to turn off the acceleration of that vehicle. Does that sound like something that's happened in the past? Think Toyota. Truthful and complete reports, statements, and testimonies. Oh my gosh, what's the first name that comes to mind over the last month on that one? Volkswagen, right? Falsification of their reports, and actually software that kind of spoofs people who are testing. So, and then enough said on that. Think about the next one. Do not abuse or violate the public trust. Volkswagen, right? They pretty much have put their reputation greatly in danger of people not trusting anything they do. The last is to inform state boards of possible ethics violations. In the United States, you cannot officially declare yourself an engineer unless you have licensure from your state. So I'm a computer engineer. So I can only put on my business card and advertise that I am an engineer if I am also a professional engineer, a PE. Getting a PE means you practice for a certain amount of time and taken a test and can verify that you have knowledge in the particular subject. And it turns out that I am a PE in computer engineering, so I can declare myself an engineer. That doesn't mean that I can sign off on documents for highway bridges and such. I have to only sign off on things that are related to electrical and computer engineering. So the IEEE has a code of ethics. Literally, we the members of the IEEE, in recognition of the importance, blah, blah, blah. You could read that as well as I can. Actually, it has several things. Act responsibly in making engineering decisions, and disclose promptly. I think you've heard the phrase whistleblowing, right? One example in engineering is the engineers that raised to management the problem with the rubber O-rings for the space shuttle, saying that it was too cold for those O-rings and there might be a danger to the rocket, and et cetera, and we all know that I believe it was Challenger that exploded on takeoff because those O-rings were faulty. Avoid conflicts of interest, and then we're going to examine conflicts of interest in a few minutes. If you look at excerpts from IBM's Code of Ethics, I like this. No employee can accept gratuities or gifts of money from a supplier, customer, or anyone in a business relationship. This is often the word called bribe. All right? And it all depends on where you are in the world. Some organizations, some companies, some governments, this is standard practice. Bribes. You give me $100,000 and I'll sign this 20 million government contract. And so what does the company usually do? they put the contract in there for $20.1 million, and one of those, $0.1 million, $100,000, goes to that government official as consulting fee. So sometimes a company's ethical or code of ethics pretty much conflicts with practices in other parts of the world and governments. And I've had to worry about this when I worked for Ericsson, and South American countries were often pointed to with this. And no employee can give gift or money or gift of significant value to a supplier if it could be viewed as being done to gain a business advantage. So, and TIs, I like this. Their employees are called TIers. Same thing. Cannot give or accept any gift that might influence a business relationship. Does not apply to items of small value commonly exchanged in business relationships. So here's a question. When I worked for Ericsson, often I would get polo shirts, and you might have seen some of these, that had a company's name on it. Is that ethical? Well, we're going to have to look at that. We have an exercise a little bit later. Excessive entertainment of any sort is not acceptable. Conferences accompanied by meal and suppliers are of art and desirable. So this means that, let's say I want to, let's say I'm selling my computers, right? And you're going to think about buying some of my computers. I can't take you out for lavish dinners, maybe see a Panthers game, right? In the box, the nice box where they just keep on feeding you and giving you alcoholic drinks, with the intention of getting you so drunk you'll sign that sales contract. But you're up for that, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. All right. So TI has this ethics quick test. Is it legal? Well, that's a great way of identifying if something is ethical or not. Does it comply? If you do it, will it make you feel bad? And I guess a hangover could be part of that, right? There's also the university, and I've heard this from several administrators at the university. They say, what would it look like if it showed up on the front page of the Charlotte Observer? That's a good gauge of if something is going to be, how it's going to be received. All right? If it's reported on the front page of the Charlotte Observer. And things like this have. For example, some organization paid for school administrators to go on a trip to, somewhere in the state, maybe a resort, to attend a conference. And a lot of the conference was sales of services that the principals and administrators of schools could use. That doesn't sound too good, does it? That actually showed up in our Charlotte Observer. And if you know it's wrong, don't do it. In fact, if you know it's wrong, it's still wrong, right? And if you're not sure, ask. Keep asking until you get a question. So let's look at this hypothetical example. Is this bribery? Gifts? Well, let's see. You're a design engineer responsible for selecting a supplier of an expensive, high-volume component. You are visited by a sales engineer who gives you a ballpoint pen and a baseball cap. Is that bribery? All right, so a baseball cap has probably a value of $10. A pen probably has a value of 50 cents. All right, so that looks pretty low. Offers to take you out to lunch at a very nice and expensive restaurant. Okay, this is a good time to vote. You could say yes or no. I'll even let you say, I don't know, all right? Who says yes, this is bribery? Who says no, this is not bribery? Who says I don't know? Yeah, all right. Now, one thing I wanted you, did you look around when I asked you to vote? All right, well, let's do this again. Who says yes? Who says no? Who says I don't know? All right, now, it wasn't 1/3, 1/3, 1/3, but there was enough difference in everybody else here to know it might be a gray area. And so what might be the thing you should do in this situation? Ask. Ask the advice of your manager, for example. That would be a very good thing to do because, it might be that it's a working lunch. He's going to be showing you a lot of stuff, and oh, by the way, this very expensive lunch place is right next to their business, and he went there because it was really convenient for you to... Who thinks this is not bribery? Who says they don't know? Okay. This may be another case where it's actually included in the price because they'll only do it if you get if you purchase their products, and you have to go to the developer's training class to learn how to use and implement the part. And oh, by the way, that cost is actually built into the price of the unit or the products that they're buying. And by the way, it's well known in the contract that this is going to be a part of it. So maybe our good buddy back there who wants to go to Hawaii, right? It may be totally right. So a lot of this is what? It all depends on all the data, right? Do I have any more? Oh, here we go. Offers to send you on an all-expenses-paid vacation for 2 to Barbados if you purchase from him or her. All right, so who thinks that this is bribery? All right, our Hawaii guy over there is all right. Who says it's not bribery? Who doesn't know? All right, good. I would say this is blatant bribery. I mean, there's no way around this. It has nothing to do with the product at all, all right? All right, so how should you respond to each of these offers? I think we already did. So remember, we put in here the gray area that, not sure about this. We had a lot of people that were yes and no on this. But I think you pretty much agreed that these two were considered bribery. All right, so here's another example. Our company offers to a project engineer responsible for specifying a selected capital equipment. So one vendor offered a trip anywhere in the world for an acceptance test. Another vendor offered satisfaction of any vice. You're familiar with the word vice, right? Gambling, women, drink, or men if you're a female. We're an open world. It could be either way anyway, all right? So let's see. Travel included with system, foods, a gift, and drink. For every gift, consider the ethical considerations, right? Does it have anything to do with this sale, this purchase, this whatever? So here's another example. A software engineer is estimating time required to complete a project. The sales engineer is estimating specifications of a new product to potential customers. Design engineer is estimating cost to develop a new product. Is it unethical to deliberately provide a biased estimate? Biased meaning what? Something that might be too low that later you're going to jack up the price once you get a signed contract? Well, let's look at an example. So a software engineer was contracted with his employer's customer on the side for a piece of software, all right? So basically he made a connection with his employer's customer. So somebody he already had a relationship with his current employment to do something. Moonlighting, we call this, all right? and he charged less than his employer would for the same work, and the amount of money was really small. So some of the aspects of this too is that, the ramifications, this is an example, an actual example, the ramifications were felt for years because why? Who does this employee really work for? Does he work for himself or company A, who he usually works for? And company B, who he did this work for, if something happens with the software, who fixes it? The employee or company A? And did you say no one? Oh no, man, you have not been in the software business. If something is not right, you get them to fix it. In fact, I worked recently with a company. I just gave them a little bit of advice. They have a ice making machine. That these ice making machines sit outside of convenience stores, gas stations and such. And it has a controller board, embedded controller board, and that has software. And a Russian company offered to write the software for them. And they did, and it worked, kind of. Oh well, I guess I'm not showing this one anymore. And the software stopped working. There were some problems with it. So now who's responsible for it? All right? They can't find the Russian company. They don't have the source code. So the company that contracted with the Russian company didn't give them the correct source code. And they didn't know enough to ask, to actually examine it. And so I was called in to look to see what they had, and I let them know that this is a mess. First of all, the code was a mess that I saw. It hardly represented what they were doing. And so this company now has to respin the board and rewrite the software for this product, and they're now another 4 months behind in releasing their product. So, yeah, when you buy software, you also buy the maintenance of that software to fix it if it doesn't work. All right? So, unfortunately, it was a really good presentation. Actually, now that I think about it, I forgot that I had it on the regular computer. So, come on. So I'll pull this up for the remaining part of my presentation. The thing to keep in mind is that very often a company will have a moonlighting type of restriction on people. You can't work in your field, company, or on your own. Being in academia, I'm actually allowed to do this. I could teach, if I want to, I could teach at CPCC. If I want to, I can write a book and get money for it. If I want, I can even go on sabbatical for a semester, get paid, and work for somebody else because I'm learning, and I could bring that learning back to the university and to the students that I work with. So, why behave ethically? Well, first of all, in a capitalistic economy is based on competition, and when you are not behaving ethically, well, it kind of corrupts the free market mechanism. That's a good reason why you see bribery more often in dictatorships and socialistic type of environments. Your professional reputation depends on you to behave ethically, both in research, engineering, and all aspects of this. Because, for example, that paper that I showed earlier, when that finally is publicized, what they did, that will follow them around. First of all, the IEEE has a mechanism by which if a if somebody is found to have plagiarized in an IEEE publication, their name gets put on a do not publish list, and they may be restricted from publishing in an IEEE journal, conference, magazine, anything else for a certain amount of time. And I personally know one person that they got a 6-year do not publish restriction, which means, IEEE is the largest compendium of technical papers anywhere, and that means they can't publish in something that is extremely large and well respected. Now, your reflects upon your employer, coworkers, university, race, sex, nationality, etc., etc. So people will make assessments on your university, your company, especially if you behave unethically. It's morally the best thing to do, and it's what's expected of you as a professional. Hence the IEEE Code of Ethics, IBM, TI, whoever you work with. So how do you maintain a high ethical standards? Well, start making ethical decisions now. Things like code for this class. If I say this is an assignment that is to be done by you and your lab partner, don't get code from somebody else in the class. First of all, we'll find it because we run this through software that will actually find the same construct and types of things, even if you change variable names. But I mean, you learn by doing. You learn best by doing. If you're just copying somebody else's work, you're not learning anything. So, frequent small decisions that are ethical lead to ethical habits. All right. Follow the student code of conduct. Ask the professor if you have questions. By the way, there's UNC Charlotte a code of ethics, which is called the Niner norm. Do you guys remember what this is? All of a sudden, my brain has left me, but there is a UNC Charlotte Code of Ethics, and get to know it and get to understand it. I think I have a link to it on my webpage. Look for a new job if your company engages in unethical practices, because believe it or not, you could go to jail for that, even if you weren't responsible. So here's another ethical situation. While working for a company, you invent a device that has potential for making you wealthy. You use the company's lab and test facilities, but did the work on your own time. So what do you do with your? What do you do with this invention? You take it. You could take it to the company's legal department. You can see a local attorney and take care of it yourself, or submit the invention in your company's Ideas Counts program, or contact the companies who have an interest in your invention and sell it to the highest bidder. So what do you think? All right, so who votes? Let's see, this would be 1, 2, 3, 4. And you got to vote for one of them. Not voting for any of them, that's cheating. It's unethical. Yeah. Who votes 1? Who votes 2? Who votes 3? Who votes 4? Okay, so you're all snickering, all right? So, the one thing to think about this in this ethical situation is usually when you start working for a company, you sign something called a right of invention. That even if you invent something on your own time at your own home, your company has rights to it. Even without using their resources, they have rights to it. So when you start employment, watch what you sign. So for example, when I started working for Ericsson, and that form came in front of me, I literally put on the form, I have invented a commercially sold small walking robot, and I will retain rights, all rights for this device. So I let them know up front that Staketo was mine, and it was here before I started working for the company, so you don't get access to it. And they were fine with that. But I let them know up front. Now, I'll go a little bit further. This says using the company's resources. And this is a situation at this university. So at this university, if I do anything with my own resources at home, it's mine. If I do anything with university resources, it's the university's first right of refusal. And in fact, you, by doing a student's, are bound by that same regulation, just for being a student. You didn't have to sign anything. All right? So those of you working on senior design, you don't own your design. Sorry, dudes. However, give you an example. Me and a bunch of students worked on a robot that crawls in a dryer vent. It sounds pretty good, right? This would be a pipe that's about 4 inches in diameter, and it works like an inchworm and goes through. We filed an invention disclosure, and then when it was time to file for patent, the university decided, we don't want to spend the money on this. We give you all rights and all ownership of this invention now. And so if I wanted to, I could do number 2. Or if I wanted to, I can do number 4. But in the end, I realized that there was no such thing as a worldwide market for a dryer vent crawling robot, because nobody in the world except for the US and Canada uses dryers, clothes dryers. So we decided it wasn't worth it. Ethical number 2. A company-sponsored training course in your field is being held in Orlando, Florida. You have no interest in the training, but you are ready for a vacation. I like that. And have never been to Disney World. So how many of you have been to Disney World? Oh gosh, some of you Indians have been there too? When?
6 years ago.
6 years ago? Wow, okay. So what do you do? All right, so here's your options, all right? Even though you have no interest, ask your supervisor if he thinks it'll benefit you. Or maybe not so obviously, it will be of some benefit, so sign up anyhow. Reluctantly decline to go, I like that. Suggest somebody else to go who has both a need and the interest. By the way, often a company will have a reward trip for a whole bunch of people for the whole company. And I know they've gone to Disney World for this. So they will bring in, if you are the winner, you will get your all expenses paid trip. And basically it turns out to be a rah-rah session, but they also have training so they can kind of write it off on their taxes. So this is not uncommon for a company to do it. So, this is interesting. Think about this. You have a choice. 1, 2, 3, or 4. So who votes 1? Who votes 2? Who votes 3? Who votes 4? All right, I didn't see all the hands raised in here, okay? So interesting that nobody chose number 3, reluctantly declined to go. But is there a right or wrong answer for this?
No.
No, because there's so many extenuating circumstances. So that is number 1. Remember what we said in ethics? It's usually good to ask. And so number 1 is obviously going to your supervisor, who should be your biggest advocate in the company beyond yourself, right? And asking their advice. It's always good to ask advice. Oh, okay. For several months, one of your colleagues has been slacking off. Oh man, this sounds like senior design. and you are getting stuck doing work. Does this sound like senior design seniors? Yeah, all right. You think it's unfair. What do you do? I like this. Recognize this as an opportunity for you to demonstrate how capable you are. Go to your supervisor and tattle. Discuss the problem with your colleague in an attempt to solve the problem without involving others, and discuss the problem with the Human Resources Department. This, I'm actually gonna, this is something that is more than just me telling you something. You have to figure this out for yourself. So I want to pause for a couple of minutes, and in your groups of 4 again, discuss it. And I want each group to come with a choice, 1, 2, 3, or 4. All right, so based on this, let's just poll this group, all right? Only one person from each group raise your hand, because I asked for each group to come to a consensus. So, do you know who your leader is in your group who's going to raise the hand? All right. Determine your leader. Who says group? All right, amongst those, who said 1? Raise your hand if your group decided on 1. Ooh, interesting. 2. Raise it high. I want to count. 1, 2, 2. Okay. 3. Ooh, wow. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. And then discuss the problem with human resources 4. All right. Your group raised your hand, so half thought one way and half thought the other way. Oh, you guys are just... All right. Interesting that a lot of you said you would discuss the problem with the colleague in an attempt to solve the problem, which is very admirable, but I can almost assure you that it won't work. Because from what I have seen in senior design and other stuff, if somebody's a slacker, they're always a slacker. And it's kind of hard to get them to change their ways quickly. So, you've seen this picture before, haven't you? So that is it for professional ethics. And if you have any questions out there in video land, that is my contact information. Thank you very much.